This man had the potential to be of great social value. He could have gone a long way ahead. He could have gone to graduate school. And he had the intellectual ability and the potential personality to get there.
Hello everyone, Anita here, and today we are going to talk to some grad students, and they're going to give us some tips about grad school or getting into grad school in general. Here we have...
I'm Grayson Adams, hello.
I'm Stephen Thornton, hi.
Why don't we start with what programs you're currently in, and we can go from there.
I'm in the Marriage and Family Therapist program at CSU Northridge.
I'm in the Marriage and Family Therapy program at North Central University.
We're going to abbreviate it to MFT when we're talking for the Marriage and Family Therapy program. And these are both master's programs, and I am also a student at NCU. What are the differences between psych-related programs? What is a marriage and family therapist?
So marriage and family therapists deal with interpersonal relationships. They particularly deal with the family unit. A lot of people think just by the title that it's couples and marriage, but it's not just that. It can be one-on-one therapy, but it's usually dealing with interpersonal relationships, either in the family or workplace or what have you.
And that's definitely different from like a social worker. So that's another program you can get into, social work, which it's more about the environment and connecting clients with resources.
Yeah.
So that's a kind of a difference between some of the programs. There's LCSW, which is a social work program. There's a clinical psychology program. There's LMFT, licensed marriage and family therapy.
And school psychology. That's another program you can go into.
Professional counselor, is that one of them?
Professional counselor. LPCC,
yeah.
LPCC. Professional clinical
There's
counselor.
a whole range of things.
There's a lot of abbreviation.
And a lot of people's misconceptions are that when you're a psychology major, you're just going to become a therapist. That's not necessarily true. So the reason that you start in a psychology program is that you want to get a base knowledge. You can use that for social media marketing, you can use that for business, you can use psychology degrees are for really anything. It's just the study of the mind. But the programs that we're elaborating on are more in-depth psychology programs that are rooted in psychology.
They're very systems centered. So there is a difference between general just psychology and marriage and family therapy. For example, the clinical social worker focuses more on like individual like psychology, whereas for us MFTs, we focus more on like the systems of a family, how people interact. And it's like when you go in to see a therapist, it's like they're there for your relationship, not for like one of the partners. They're there to help your relationship. A like clinical social worker might be there for you and might help you find ways. And they both like intersect. They both have varying things and strategies that you might see both of them do.
You can see, a social worker as your therapist. That's totally common, completely okay, because you do get the same training in that program to be able to give individual therapy as well. And clinical psychology is more research-based. So that's the one that, if you're really into studies or you're into journals and you really want to know, how does X affect Y? Things like that.
Also, like you're doing studies and trying to solve like broad problems, whereas as a marriage and family therapist or social worker, you're really focused on the individual or the family unit.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely want to do another video to get into each one of those more in depth. So definitely subscribe to my channel to keep in the loop with when I'm going to be posting that as well. And what made you choose to get into the program that you're currently in?
I got into MFT kind of in a strange way. I was a music major in college and a business music major. So I've been living a strange life of doing marketing in the music industry, but also being a musician at the same time. And my real love is being an artist. And on the side, I was reading all these psychology books and self-help and whatnot. And I started telling my friends, I was like, you know what? If I wasn't an entrepreneur and a musician, I'd be a psychologist. I realized that marriage and family therapy was a really good path to be able to help people, to be able to apply a lot of the knowledge that I'd already been learning, and to go and get a formal education and to be able to help people in a professional setting.
I asked you to be on this video because you have a unique perspective. You know, you're coming from a music background, and people think like you have to come from a psychology background, and that's not necessarily true.
In fact, that's one of the things that held me back from going back and getting more of an education, is because I thought I was going to have to get a second undergraduate degree in psychology, and then a master's degree, and then a PhD in order to be a therapist.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. But when I realized that, you know, you just have to have the bachelor's and maybe some prerequisites in psychology, which I went back and took, and you know, then you can apply and you know, get your MFT degree.
You bring up a really good point. People think often, and I did myself as well, that you have to be a PhD to be able to practice therapy. That's just not the case. So the training that you get in a master's program is the training and background that you will have to take with you to become a therapist. Now, PhDs and PsyDs are completely different things. They're both doctoral degrees, but they are two different things, and you don't necessarily need them to be able to practice therapy. But that is another common misconception. You definitely get the training that you need in a master's program to be able to be a therapist. So Grayson, I wanted to actually bring you on in this video because you have a very extremely unique story that is something that I think the viewers would really be able to get a lot out of. Do you want to talk about your situation with this as well?
At the start of the first semester, I had a family member pass away, and that was the most difficult time of my life. And I just started the program, which is just the worst combination of things. It was just extremely, extremely difficult. And somehow I still managed to get through it. My single best piece of advice is, if you have like a family emergency or some other kind of life crisis, talk with your professors, because especially in these kinds of programs, they're going to be very understanding of what you're going through. They're going to be able to make a lot of adjustments with your classes, with homework, and maybe at the moment you won't be able to, but if you can ask a friend or family member to just email or talk with your professors, if you just can't at the moment, then that's also good. They should be very understanding and make those adjustments to help you just deal with classes and with whatever you're going through as well. Find someone you can talk to that you trust, be it a family member. Therapists too, they're extremely helpful. It's invaluable to find someone you trust that you can talk to. Don't make any rash decisions. If depending on what you're going through, your emotions might be high. Like, I felt like I wanted to leave the program at a few points. I mean, that was at finals time, so that was understandable. But what I did was, I felt like the strong emotion, I just took a few days to just think about it. And again, it's like I talked to someone about it, I went through it, and I decided that wasn't the best choice, was to leave the program, because that would have been something I couldn't have undone. That would have been a whole different path. And I felt pretty passionately about it at the time, but then after a few days I thought about it, and it's like, okay, it's not exactly what I wanted to do. And so just take some time for yourself. If you have some strong emotions, don't make any rash decisions. Just take some time for yourself.
That is a really good point, is when you're in that headspace, it's so important not to make life-altering decisions during that time. Just stick with what you're doing, get the therapy you need, get the support you need, have that circle of friends, have that circle of family, have that support system in place so that you can really work through it without really damaging anything else that you'll have regrets about later on. Thank you for having the courage to come on here and help us and give us some understanding about your background. And why did you choose the marriage and family therapy program?
Well, that one's just a little bit of an odd story. Right out of high school, I went to go do video game design, and I found that field's really extremely crazy stressful.
Oh.
So I decided to not do that, and I was just wandering around campus, like just taking in between classes, like what am I gonna do with my life? And I just kind of realized I'm good at talking with people. I like talking to people. I like hearing people's stories and interacting with them. So I was like, why not just be a therapist? Like, that's like, my work would be what I love to do naturally. So
Yeah.
it's like I'm just getting paid to do what I like to do. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna go for it.
And I feel like people that get into MFT, they are really good listeners, and they do love to hear people's stories, and sometimes a little too much, but
Yeah.
we definitely are interested in people. And so I think that that's a really good quality to have if you are looking to become an MFT. So if these are things that you're kind of like trying to figure out where you place, really look at yourself and say, do I like to talk to people? Do I like to hear stories? Do I like to help my friends get resources? Do I like to help people in their environment situation? Or am I more research focused? Do I like really figuring things out and solving problems? So these are all really good tips and things that you guys have been telling us, because this is really going to help, you, the audience, figure out where you would place and what program is right for you. What do you think that these programs are really looking for as far as applicants?
Well, they definitely look for your ability to be professional. So can you dress appropriately, behave appropriately? Especially with like social media.
Mental health professionals are held to a higher standard. And that's something that you definitely have to go in and realize, because when you go into it, you don't know until you really get your feet wet that, wow, okay, so now I have to all of a sudden be held to this higher standard, and you have to really be prepared for that.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that, personally for me, I don't think I was quite prepared for that when I started, and I was like, all right, Anita, you got to really focus on becoming a professional. This is a different life than your undergrad, so you are now being held to that higher standard. So that is definitely something that I've had to struggle with, especially with my YouTube channel, and just kind of reformat things, even on my channel. Not only because YouTube is kind of changing their platform, but myself as a professional, now I'm really holding myself to a higher standard as well. So that's a really good point about
And
professionalism.
I want to say, don't let that scare you, because it's a process for all of us that we all have to go through, and it can be incredibly challenging to look at yourself in those ways and to change, but that's also part of what's so rewarding about it and as a profession, because you never stop learning, you never stop growing, as well as looking at different like personality traits, like are you a good listener?
Can you really focus on the person that's speaking to you? Are you actively listening to them? That kind of thing.
Having an open mind too is a big thing, and not being so set in your ways, because you're going to have a really diverse set of clients. The point is to be as non-judgmental as possible.
Yeah, and it's hard sometimes to do that, but you do have to check your biases at the door if you're going to be a therapist. So this is something that through the training you really dive into, because you're constantly doing journal entries, and they give you prompts to kind of figure out what your biases are in these programs. And then you kind of look at it and you're like, wow, wait a minute, I didn't even realize, this prompt was to get that bias out of me, for me to really examine that. And so for NFTs particularly, you're going to have to do a lot of soul searching and digging deep. So that's something to keep in mind, because if you're afraid of yourself, you're not going to do well in this program, because you are going to be looking internally a lot throughout the program and figuring out who you are and what your beliefs are, and if you're able to check them and what your limitations are.
If you're working with a client and you're getting triggered by what they're saying, the therapist has to be, in a place of being able to really be of service to that client, So
Absolutely,
anyway,
yeah. And so with that, like when you're in the grad program and they tell you, you have to experience personal therapy, this is also another video, because I feel like there's so much that they train you in why it's beneficial for you to be in therapy while you're in the grad program. But like you said, it's definitely good to get all of those things kind of out in the open and handle them and deal with them. Maybe not resolve them all, but definitely get a handle on them so that you don't get triggered in therapy when you're with your client. So if you get triggered in your own personal therapy, that's perfectly fine, because that's where you want to work it out. But definitely you don't want to bring that counter-transference into your therapeutic sessions. So that is something that is definitely a term that transference and counter-transference is something that you will learn in the program as well.
I think that having some volunteer experience, if there's a local health center that you can, do some volunteer hours at.
Hotline.
Or a hotline.
I remember, Grayson, you said you worked at a hotline. And
Helpline.
Yeah.
Helpline, yes, hotline or helpline. And you're doing advocacy now too.
Yeah.
And so that's actually a really good point.
Particularly if they have a training course, it kind of helps you to get your feet wet in the field and to kind of see what it's like. Because I think one of the things they're a little concerned with is students who think that therapy is going to be just like what they see on television,
And
you
it's
know?
not.
And it's not. Like there's,
Far from
it's far from it. And it is a lot of inner work, you know. One of the things that all of the graduate programs in this field stress is self-care. And being able to take time out to think and to process, or take a walk or meditate, you know, whatever you're going through. I mean, it's okay to take that time out to take care of yourself.
What is the daily life of someone in the MFT program? Now, I know, Grayson, you're going to a brick and mortar traditional program, and Stephen and I are actually in an online program, so it's not in that traditional brick and mortar setting. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what that's like for you, and then we'll kind of talk about what that's like for us.
If you're used to the campus already, say you did your undergrad at the same university, it's about the same. You might be going to a different set of buildings. You learn the classrooms you go in. Usually the parking's terrible. That's just how going to brick and mortar places.
Anywhere, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you just got to deal with that.
Yeah.
But other than that, really you want to capitalize on that, like, person-to-person interaction. Talk with your professors. If you have questions, like, really there is a lot of value in that, like, discussions you can have with your fellow students, with their professors, and kind of that discourse that can come about because of that. I'd say that's probably the most valuable thing of doing a brick and mortar program.
And I think that it's really valuable for role plays as well. You have somebody right there in person that you can do those role plays with. For NCU, the daily life is basically whatever you make it. The classes are on a rolling basis, and they start weekly. And when you are starting your week, you have to turn in your assignments by Sundays, and then you pretty much get graded and feedback by Thursday, and then you can turn your next assignment in by Sunday. So they don't want you to do bulk uploading, which just means that, you know, you're just turning in assignment after assignment after assignment without reviewing your feedback. They really want you to wait until you get that feedback on the Thursday, apply it to your next assignment, then turn it in on Sunday.
You have to be regimented. You have to make sure that you keep yourself on a schedule and that you take time out to do your work on time. I mean, if you've ever taken online courses, you know what that's like. But I feel like in the graduate school setting, I mean, NCU is really good about helping you have a connection with the professor.
Absolutely.
You know, so you feel like there's another person on the other end.
And you have one-on-one interactions with that, which
Yeah.
I found was why I really chose that, because I
Yeah.
really appreciated that you have this person that's right there that you can make an appointment with one-on-one and talk to them about, you know, how are you doing? Do you have any questions? You know, they help you and support you along the way throughout the whole process. And that was really something that I was looking for.
The other thing I wanted to add, like the difference between brick and mortar and online, is that the brick and mortar, it's more classes at once, whereas the online, it's less classes because it's designed for people who are working. So it's that can be something you can consider if you're looking at grad programs. Some of them.
I don't think all of them.
Not all of them. Yeah,
we
I'm
got
generalizing.
accepted to Pepperdine and NCU, and we chose, and they were both online programs, and we chose NCU because with Pepperdine, I know you have to be in classes at a certain time with the professors. At NCU, you don't have to do that.
Right.
You can just kind of do it on your own pace, make your appointments with your professors, as opposed to Pepperdine's program. They're clinical psychology with an emphasis in MFT. You have to show up at the time. You have to be there for the lectures on camera, so it is a different feel.
And with NCU, you can choose how fast you take the program. You can take it like one class at a time, or you can take several classes at a time, just like you would with a traditional brick and mortar. One of the other things that I like about this field is that so far I don't feel like there's competition. I feel like we are in this to help people. We're in this to help the community.
We're in this together.
Yeah, and we're helping our community. So, you know, I come from a business background, and it's very competitive, and, you know, like, well, if they get that client, then that's a client that I don't have, and vice versa and whatnot. In this field, we're not competing, and it's and like, we're here to serve, we're here to help. And like, if, you know, we were working at the same center and a client I'm working with feels more comfortable with a female therapist?
It's about networking. So, like he was saying, if there's a client that wants a female, we're referring each other. While you're in these programs, you're making those connections. So you're really wanting to get to know the people that are in your field and in your classrooms.
There's probably going to be a fair amount of, I would like a female therapist. And as a male therapist, we may have to challenge that a few times because we are all trained in the same way. So we should all be able to help in the same way.
Absolutely. I was set up with a male therapist and I didn't feel comfortable at first. And I was like, I want a female therapist. But, you know, I really just gave it a chance and I was like, you know, it really doesn't make a difference what their gender is. So, you know, even going in it with that mentality, you might change your mind. So really just give it a chance regardless. What are the different careers and jobs that this program really prepares you for?
There's a lot of different areas you can go into, and you can specialize if you want, but you'll be working with families, with children, individuals. You can work at a correctional facility if you want to. I know there's demand for that. Something to think about. And then work for the government. You can also work at clinical sites. There's a lot of different clinics. Some are help like impoverished areas.
Marginalized demographics and things like that, and also like drug addiction counselors and things like that too.
Yeah, like there's so many specializations. There really is a big freedom there for you to choose like where you want to go. You can enter in a group of therapists to do like a group like private practice. You can become a supervisor and supervise other trainees. There's just a huge list of things you can go into. So it is a pretty good like degree and like program to be in.
Well, that's gonna do it, and thank you both so much for coming on board.
Thanks for having us.
I definitely will have some referrals in the future. So if I have
networking.
Exactly. If I have any clients that need a male therapist and they're just definitely gung-ho about that, I have two wonderful human beings that I can refer them to here.
Just look up my name and you'd find either the place I'm employed, a clinic, or I'd have my own webpage, and then you can contact me there if you would like me as your therapist.
Why don't you tell us where they can get a hold of you?
Stephen M. Thornton. Maybe I'll make a website. I don't know.
And y'all know where to find me. I'll eventually have a website as well after I finish my internship. So now I'm gonna let John Bailey tell you what you can do next.
Subscribe to Anita Star's channel and turn on notifications. Join her Patreon as well, because Anita doesn't have any friends and needs your support. Well, besides me.
I thought these were my friends.
You were wrong.
Oh.
Also like this video, because Anita needs validation.
Thanks, John.
You're welcome.
See you later,
Stargazers. Bye.
Sure, Grayson had enough room.
I just want to be the center of attention. I'm a Leo after all.
Go on.
Hey, I'm a Leo.
Oh no! I'm a Taurus!
Can you see
Help!
yourself?